Welcome to Face to Face, and today we're going to talk about Muslim community in New York City. We're going to talk about discrimination. We're going to talk about Family for Freedom with Sharmin. Sharmin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. So we met a couple of months ago, and I was really impressed with your presentation on the Muslim community. It was during an event on of the Japanese remembrance concerning the camp of the Japanese in the US who have been in camp during the Second War. And so I think it was very interesting to see the relation between what's happening to the Muslim community today and that story in the past. Can you describe a little bit where we are now with the Muslim community?
Let's see, let me collect my thoughts here. I think where we are now, since 9/11, there has been, so many policies, laws have been put into practice where Muslim communities have been targeted, where we have law enforcement, federal agencies and local agencies have been placing informants, agent provocateurs in our community centers, mosques, shops, where in even our when people are demonstrating in social justice movement as well, Muslims and in other communities. So. And there was a AP report here that came out that AP actually exposed, or rather not came out, exposed these undercover surveillance operations that NYPD implemented here since 2001. So where they found actually no terrorist in this entire surveillance machine that they used on the Muslim community here and around other states. Things haven't improved. It's been basically declining or getting more worse for the Muslim community, because now the government has been trying to implement called the countering violent extremism programs, which basically is trying to have private agencies like schools, doctors, health professionals, counselors, and whatnot to identify what the government considers, law enforcement considers radical or signs of radicalization, which basically includes, and then it's connected to this radicalization theories, unsubstantiated, not empirically researched, that's connected to the NYPD's report that came out, I think, 2007, which got adopted by federal government and FBI and whatnot. So there's a whole range of things that has been happening at the government agency level, where now they're trying to implement these programs to identify little children or anybody when they go to the doctor's office or when they go to the counselor's office, to identify these elements of radicalization, basically whether or not they are
connected.
From a Muslim perspective, basically these are markers of spirituality, religiosity, identity markers. So when people, a group of people are trying to find a sense of self, their self and identity, belongingness, they're going to try to connect to their culture, their background, their heritage, their religion. And if those are the items or issues that are getting targeted from the state, but the state considers that to be radical or deviant. So that's where the problem is.
It gets complicated.
Right, and then and aside from that, that's actually experienced by these policies that we have that has been implemented is actually experienced by the Muslim community differently. So people are under surveillance. We know that from Snowden, right? Muslim community has always known that or felt that. And then the people are getting targeted when they're flying. So there's no fly list. There's informants in the communities. There's surveillance, and then so the community as a whole experiences that. Then there's these additional layers of targeting happens in terms of prosecution. Preemptive prosecution, some people call them predatory prosecution, where basically the government has been using what is called the Material Support to Terrorism statute. It's a very broad, vague, shadowy kind of statutes that has been used, and anything that the government uses, anything. Usually, initially, it is used for when the behavior that is related to either money, funding, or some kind of violence. Those were considered as support, but we see more and more government has expanded that. People's freedom of speech, translations, communications, online communications, or what they're reading are being used as material support to terrorism. So that's really broad. That's like, you're checking out books from the library, and they're checking on you what you're checking out, and then they will basically target you as saying, okay, you're supporting some terrorist organizations abroad or international terrorism. So it's really broad, and that has been kind of the legal statute that has been used on Muslim community in targeting and prosecuting people. Freedom of speech, their freedom of association has been basically Muslims seem to have no such freedom here. And then so that is another layer of how these policies are impacting. One, overall, there is this impact. People are living in fear, alienated as a result of this, and then people communities are getting targeted and placed into the criminal justice system. Then you have the immigration issue also. Deportation is taking place. Obama has deported more people than any other president that we know. And then I was just talking and translating for a journalist, the Bangladeshis who got deported in Bangladesh just last week. I was talking to them, translating for the journalist about what's happened to them and how they got transferred, deported back. So there's another layer of experience.
The Bangladeshis were coming for political asylum.
Yes. I was actually translating for a journalist who's writing an article right now about that.
Oh, I have a friend who actually was invited to a journalist who was invited in the White House, and he doesn't know how to manage the situation now. It's getting very complicated.
Right. Yeah, and it was really I've known, stories about deportation, but talking to the people who actually experienced that, it was really horrifying for me when I was translating. The way they were put into this blanket and with belts, they were bleeding, bruised for like many days. So this is another layer of these post 9/11 national security policies, how they are impacting Muslim community overall, and then different segments of the community gets targeted with different kind of policies. So I have a brother also who was targeted. He was born and raised here basically, and then he went to Bangladesh to get married. He was fluent in Arabic, translating and materials and publishing them online. So his translations and his online communications became issue for the government, and he was under surveillance as a result. And then they basically kidnapped him a few days after he got married, in front of his wife.
In New York.
And so he was in Bangladesh to get.
He was in Bangladesh. Yes. He was arrested in Bangladesh.
He went to Bangladesh to get married.
Yeah.
And then 10, 12 days later, he was kidnapped by Bangladeshi military at the behest of the U.S. government. And then he went missing actually 4 days. At that time, it was very nightmare kind of existence for us because we didn't know where he was. And we thought they took him to Guantanamo Bay because that's the place that we know where people are being unjustly imprisoned. So a few days, I think it was 4 days later, then the CNN broke the news that they're bringing him to U.S. and he was actually in New York for a few months before, and then they transferred him to Atlanta with the material support to terrorism charges.
And that's when this happened?
So this happened in 2006.
And he's still not resolved.
Right. So he is he's imprisoned in again. So after September 2001, the government here, we know about Guantanamo Bay. the unjust conditions where innocent people are being tortured, has been tortured, and still languishing there. But there is actually two prison units that the U.S. government established here within the Federal Bureau of Prison, which were established secretly. And then I think it was Washington Post who broke the news about that in 2007 or 8. So these two units are called Communications Management Unit, where it's like 60 to 70% of the people in those locations, in these units, are Muslims who are charged with material support to terrorism cases, national security cases.
But did he go to court? Did he had any?
So so my brother had so he had a trial, and he actually defended himself at his trial.
Okay.
He's actually one of the first person, I think, in the national security cases that represented himself, for which we are actually very proud of, because he was in Atlanta. When he was in Atlanta pre-trial, he was in solitary confinement for over 3.5 years, where he was also assaulted. It was a tactic the U.S. government was using to basically silence him, because he knew that this whole case was kind of manufactured around him, and so he was talking about it to his lawyers. So one of the things that we see with these cases, people are put into solitary confinement pre-trial as a way to break that person, as a way to alienate that person, silence that person, the prisoners, and to stop them from helping their own defense, helping their lawyers. That's actually a whole strategy that has been used and has been used with other population before too. So that's kind of a strategy they used on my brother. My brother was assaulted as a result of this. There was a problem at the prison in Atlanta, and then he actually also locked himself up in his cell, in his solitary cell, for over a month. He was afraid to come out because of the assault that he was subjected to. So having experienced and gone through that, he was also in hunger strike for a while. Then rising up and then defending himself. And speaking to the judge all along. Actually, he was always in communications with the judge himself. It's a form of resistance, strength. That resisting spirit, and so we are very thankful and proud of my brother. The same people who have tried to shut him down, silence him, lock him, he rose up and spoke up against them, and inside the court actually. So he did go through a trial process in which he was found guilty of all the 4 charges, which was all basically conspiracy and the material support, because of his translations, and mostly because the communications, he was in communication with other youth. So as a result, one of the things that happens as a result of the targeting, where law enforcement is basically assaulting free speech, the religious speech or political speech. And so a lot of these kids, they end up finding a community online or other spaces, and they're learning and sharing what they're learning and sharing what they're hearing about in the news. That comes under surveillance, and then the government goes after those kids while they're having this kind of conversation. So that's actually what happened in my brother's case. So they were all youth, basically online. This community that have built, were sharing and sharing their experiences and learning from each other. So he went through the trial, and then in solitary confinement before trial, and then he was placed in this secret prison called the Communications Management Unit. Again, there's 60 to 70% of the prisoners inside these units are Muslims. And then there is also religious restrictions, no visitations, limited visitation, contact visit. There's no contact visit at all. So a lot of families have a lot of problems around there. There are lawsuits around these prisons as well. There's a lawsuit around religious prayer. The Muslim prisoners actually won that lawsuit because they were obstructing them from praying the daily 5 prayers. So one of the prisoners filed a lawsuit, and then he won that. Although they're still not able to pray 5 times a day, or they do it differently, like 2 people can pray instead of the whole congregation. So there's a lawsuit, and one of the lawsuits, I think, they filed an appeal, again, questioning the existence of these and how Muslims are placed, because we don't know how my brother was placed in there, why he was placed there. and what they have to do to get themselves removed from there. To if they want to be removed to another prison, what is the process?
What is the process?
Procedures.
Yeah.
The prison never notified them. So there's a appeal.
So you
right
cannot
now.
apply or you cannot do a request and
So
be
I know some prisoners have applied, requested to be removed from the CMUs to be placed near their families,
Yeah.
and a lot of them requests were denied. There is although I've seen that after 6 to 7 years, the prison, if there is no infraction, like inside you have no problem, problem in the prison, then they would move them out. So yeah, he has been there. He's not there right now. This year they moved him to Mississippi from the CMU. So it's kind of closer to my family in Atlanta. My family is in Atlanta. Yeah.
Okay.
So we see these kind of cases where manufactured cases, basically. The Muslims are being used as a scapegoat. These individuals, like my brother, and the families are being basically used as a scapegoat because, again, we are in a crisis mode still, right? After 9/11, there's still this crisis mode that we are in, moral panic. We need something to bring about order and as a society, as a country, and so and scapegoats operate that way. We need to have these mythic figures to make sure that, and then through fear we kind of silence and keep that cohesion.
And so I know you organize a lot of things. You have a vigil in New York.
Yes. So there is a group of several groups. Families have campaigned around their cases, and then there are groups in New York City. There was a case in Fahad Hashmi case, who was also again unjustly targeted, and now he's in the CMUs. So there was a campaign around him. His family have started this campaign, and people associated with that campaign brought in these other families and different organizations together for conversations. It was a couple of years ago in 2013, although Fahad Hashmi's campaign started back in 2008 and 9. So it was kind of an extension of the work the communities here were doing around these terrorism, material support, national security cases. And so we established, it's called the No Separate Justice Campaign, bringing all these campaigns together under this kind of one umbrella, bringing all these people together. So there is a monthly vigil. First Monday of each month, there is a vigil in front of the Metropolitan Correction Center in Lower Manhattan, where we try to bring in family members to share what happened, to talk about a case, a prisoner, and then speakers talk about it. Basically, it's a way to bear witness to the injustice that's happening, and a way to bring people in together so that we can. It's a public education campaign that we have here. That we'd love people to come and join us every Monday.
Okay, and your brother, more concretely, what are the aspiration, or what is the hope?
Hope. So hope. I think, I understand my responsibility is to speak about these issues and educate, so more and more people learn about it, so we can build a more stronger movement to address, to challenge these issues. Because I think we need to we need a lot of people involved in this to be able to change. To be able to dismantle, the war on terror is not just it's not just impacting the Muslim community. It's actually impacting. We have 2010. I think the peace activists were also targeted. They were not arrested under those charges, but they were targeted, or they were threatened that they will be targeted. A lot of other communities, you have seen that extended to Black Lives Matters movement, where they have been under surveillance as well. So these policies are not just impacting Muslim community directly anymore. It's actually spreading. It's spreading, and it's going to spread if people are not standing together to challenge it, to dismantle it. And there are tactics that the government uses, such as fear, such as isolation. These are actually tactics of state power. So to understand that, these are tactics. These are not actually people who have done anything, but these are tactics are being used by using these individuals to keep us silent, so more injustice can happen from powers. So I think the aspiration is that people come out to this, in the local context in New York, people come out to this vigil, learn about these cases. There are families who need to support local families, and there are families I know who are not local, but in other states as well. And then when we hear about these cases, there is a hysteria that the media is used to create this hysteria to instill or assault us with this fear. Know that these cases are manufactured, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are several reports that come out from Human Rights Watch, books written by Trevor Aronson, The Terror Factory. There's also a book by, there are documentaries, Terror, there's documentary. My brother is in a documentary, Homegrown by HBO. There's another documentary, The Nuremberg 4. We know these are entrapment cases. So people to know that these are not people who have actually done anything, any violent crime. It's just that these are being twisted to make it look like.
I remember a story upstate New York of a guy who has been targeting and then it's a documentary.
Albany, New York, I think. Yes, it's an entrapment case. Yes, I know those families. Yes.
So, what and for your brother, what's going to be the?
So my brother is in Mississippi now. He's studying. He studies a lot in prison, and now Ramadan is coming. So he's going to be busy, kind of reading and
but we don't know when he's going to.
He's scheduled to be out in 2021.
Oh wow!
He was sentenced for 17 years. So it's a really a horrifying sentence for somebody who's just translating.
I know.
But so we try to do what we can, and we ask people to pray for us, come out to these vigils, support these families. Know that when you see these cases being played in the media and on television and whatnot, these are manufactured, contrived charges, not necessarily real. Yeah.
How did you see the news of the mayor in London?
Oh, so the mayor in London.
You were surprised?
I wasn't surprised. I think I've been reading a lot on social media. There's different kind of responses to his election or to him being elected as a mayor. Well, it's not a new thing that a Muslim has become a mayor in a Western societies, in a Western city. We have had that before. It's just that I don't know, we have to see what he does with his power.
No, I thought it was a good
I know. I think I want to see what he does with his power is more important to me than than that he is a Muslim who's now mayor of London.
No, I agree with you. Okay. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
And then all the best for your family.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So that was the show for today. You can keep reading the news on presenza.com, and we will see you soon. Thank you so much.